and leading us to such path where we are at conflict, where to cross the limit to our internal clashes with the reality, or to keep a certain kind of a desire that can emancipate our body and mind, rather just filling a short moment of pleasure. So here actually this theme is very much relevantly connecting to the post pandemic times, and I thank both the organizer and the principal for letting me to speak about the civilization to which we are very much always opportunistically looking to some advancement and enrichment. Now, I'm going to give you such intricacies of that civilization that indeed they had a big American dream before their eyes after 4th July 1776. But point was that they were mostly multicultural, pluralistic, and they did not have that kind of education which European Puritan society used to be privileged. You already know the American history, that there they had to struggle for each and every pinch of land to capture, not only from the European colonizers, because European colonizers, of course, were British imperialism, but many of the colonies were of different European nation states. So all these nation states, they had their prodigies or their generations that were bringing up America as a powerful nation after their independence from British imperialism. Now, my writers, they all belong to basically, you may say, the early 20th century. Means, if we find in history, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he was the first to give Americans the notion of literary independence. Now, what do you mean by literary independence? Means that common man is the hero. Domestic issues would be the in the prime, plot in the narrative of the narrative structure. So, if the common man situations, domestic aspects were the prime, factors to bring into light, so naturally the tragedy of the common man was also giving them a kind of a spotlight to understand that unless the common man is at peace, unless the common man has the opportunity and equality and the status of dignity, then only the project of American dream can be.
Two or one simultaneously.
Voice is very much echoing at your level. So let's come back to the topic now, the concept of human bondage. The bondage means limitation, restriction, forbidden to do something. It means prevented to do something. Generally, we find bondage as in a literal sense physically. You are trapped, enslaved. Your sovereignty is in the hands of somebody else. You are like a bonded labor. Generally, we understand bondage in this way. So, American civilization till 19th century was in that kind of state because African Americans were mostly the labor. They were considered to be primitive and aborigines. Only the white Americans, they were the rulers. And in the white Americans also there was category that British imperialism was the colonizer. So there was a sense of conflict with regard to their opportunity and the status, not only before colonizers, but also among themselves. Why? Because when they go out of their boundaries, they find that they are entrapped in their certain internal conflicts because of their incapacities, insecurities, or certain kind of psychological uh, repression or depression they used to go through. And therefore they used to feel some kind of isolation. So bondage also relates to isolation or alienation of oneself by making you aloof with the internal weakness. Aloof from the internal weakness means you don't want to understand your own weakness, you want to just ignore it and finding some other makeshift to release your, you know, some leisure time or pastime. You're not actually working on your.
Ma'am, we can't hear you. Ma'am, we can't hear you.
Okay, so entrapment is basically the word that has to be psychologically understood in the narratives of the writing. Then what about the confinement? Confinement means that you are isolated in your own internal depression or repression, or sometimes you have got been suppressed and you can't speak. So or you can't just get whatever you desire. So therefore you confine yourself in your own cocoon shell, like in the play Glass Menagerie the Laura character does. Then you are trapped. Trapped means you want to open up, but the opportunities, they are not for you, because they don't consider, the outside world don't consider you as that privileged or as that advanced. So therefore they try to create a trap. So sometimes the trap and entrapment has a very silver line to understand that how the human body has to counter certain illusions of oneself that has been developed by oneself, and that has to be created in such a way that the outside world may accept you. So another way to understand term bondage is physically bound or enslaved, or certain impositions due to some indoctrinated ideologies. Third, the psychological bondage is based on emotional attachment. Currently we are mostly suffering from some kind of emotional crisis, and those emotional crises, they occur due to some kind of attraction, or you embody something which is certainly giving you a pleasure, and to spend your some leisure hours, or to be free from somebody else who wants to impose something on you. But point is that it is not giving you harmonious development, and your intellectual faculties are not growing. So human mind, when surrenders internally the will or the willpower, his mind and body gets into certain temptation, and intrinsically it captures your sense organs, and unknowingly is caught into that certain kind of trap. So capacity to reason and to detach from material illusions can only release from any sort of existential bondage or anguish. Otherwise, man searches resolution to skip the fundamental reality of the journey of life. I'm coming to the next pattern of understanding human bondage. There was the author Somerset Maugham. He wrote in 1915 a book of human bondage, and this title he derived from Spinoza, part fourth of his novel of human bondage refers to this title, which implicates the strength of the emotions. In Latin, Baruch Spinoza, in his book Ethics, discusses the same with reference to people's inability to control their emotions, which constitute bondage. So, according to Spinoza, the nature or cosmos exists with a mode of infinite attributes, thought, and extension. I would like to bring an interpolation here. I think everybody has read a poem of Thomas Gray, Thoughts in a Garden. You go in a garden and you will be somewhere into floating in certain kind of imagination. Your mind would be flowing with some fantasy while being around in the midst of flowers. So as the flowers are innocent, so your mind is also very innocently looking at the colors and the delicacy of the flowers. So that is thought. But how that thought proceeds, exceeds to higher kind of imagination, that's very beautifully been elaborated in the poem Thoughts in a Garden by Thomas Gray. So if you go through that poem, you will understand that how thought and extension means the memory, the desires of past. Then extension also means recapitulation of memory and then putting it into certain kind of further imagination. That is, your recollection of memories leads you to imagination, and memories becomes fresh. So that is extension. Now, how consciously they are influencing the behavior, but in an unconscious way. Sometimes you use the word slip of tongue or absent-minded. So unconsciously, sometimes these extensions dominate. So American civilization dramatists, they basically work on these two words, thought and extension. If these two are not collaborated in a balanced way, certainly the later can dominate your thought. And your thought unconsciously will bring such behavior which you will understand when you will be coming to your actual senses. Now come back to the next slide. That is human thought, extension, and then now emotion. The thought refers not to the mental process themselves, but to mental states or system of ideas brought by these processes. Extension signifies stretching out, taking up space, that is spreading one's internal mental cognition into the external world. So all whatever you have got in your subconscious mind through your experiences one after the other in the world, they get into the hidden. But sometimes when they come to the behavior level, there the emotion has to be checked. So therefore, human emotion theorizes the infinity of space. That is, there happens endless transmission, reception, perception of memory and imagination, of logic and thinking, of problem solving or judging sometimes. Even unconscious mental processes govern the train of thought, which gets unfolded in behavioral dispositions. Now next, conscious thoughts in context of human emotions. All the plays written by the American 20th century dramatists, they focused on these theoretical ideas given on this slide. Whatever conscious thoughts come into your mind, they relate to the law of thought. That is to three fundamental laws of logic, contradiction, and negation. Sometimes we contradict, means we don't accept reality. We have our own rationality. And then through our rationality, we contradict the reality. That means we are in negation. And when we are in negation, then the principle of identity gets into crisis. It's a very complicated law of thought. Now come to the when human emotion, while in space of thinking, denies the law of contradiction, then human either wants to exit in same present object or does not hold for changing things in the world. Okay, he wants to remain uh, in his own cocoon, whatever the shell, protected shell he has created around his thought process, that he doesn't want to cross. So all the British uh, civilization, when as a colonizer working in America, why they were successful? Because they were holding change, and when they were holding change, so they were progressing, and that's why they were controlling 71 countries. But Americans, when they were copying the British pattern, they could not understand this silver difference, that to present in one cocoon as per their pattern they have been given through their lineage or through their genetics, or to bring some change, hence remain in some way in their own built makeshift ideas or illusion. That's the bondage or human predicament, which hampers a person to break away from this entrapment or trap built within and built by external factors. Hence, becoming is not possible without change. Now, I'll come to the play. Uh, Before I discuss other ideas, I want to take the play of Tennessee Williams, or we can take Eugene O'Neill's The Emperor Jones. That how he was confined to his own uh, consciousness, which was given him certain power to become the center in the struggle. But when he attained that power in the struggle, what happened? He just did not want to share his strengths with others. He wanted to confine himself, his power and pride within his own body and mind. And what happened then? The natives, they were just like now slaves, as once Brutus Jones was a convict, or maybe doing menial job under certain boss. I will not say that Brutus Jones was ever a slave. He was a Pullman porter, a black American, but he had never felt somewhere in his life that he has been given equal opportunity or equal existential privileges like whites in America. So that kind of certain frustration led him to struggle as a convict or as a porter. Now, why was he a convict? He became convict because he wanted to excel in his job, and so he used shortcuts. He made a sinful path, and that became the past. Now, the past he had as a convict, And when he became emperor in one of the islands of West Indies, he tried to control the natives by exploiting their superstitions or their ignorance. Now, what is the actual problem then? He was putting to the natives, that natives were thinking that he's also a black man. He should be sympathetic. He should have some sympathy for them. But he was completely deprived for such sense for others. Rather, he created fear, injustice, and inequality. He was completely devoid of emotional sanctity. Means he did not have any kind of a principle or a doctrine to run the island as an emperor. So when Smithers informed him that all the natives have rebelled and the old woman has come to the palace to inform that rebels are making plan to out him through from his palace, he took it very lightly. He said, "No worry, I can go ahead and I can escape from the jungle. I have already made plans." So means again he was not thinking that somewhere he might be at wrong or he might have committed something wrong. It means he lost all his sensitivity to balance his consciousness to understand how to make a harmonious rapport with the natives. So he disembodied his body and mind from pity and sympathy. And in this way, his personal situation is entrapped is in the collective unconscious memories, because he felt that unless one has the power and the pride and the money, one cannot be the winner and achiever. He forgot that to be winner and achiever, one has to extend the strengths to make a good rapport and harmony in the society. And his present actions and psyche and later his hallucinations proceed from racial memory, subjugates his conscious mind, and although he had never been a slave or auctioned as slave, but he sees such frightening visions. Now I'll get to the another idea here. The modern philosophy in the modern industrial world is interpreted as per ordinary human understanding of the worldly life, with a sense of choice, of their self-freedom, of self-responsibility. Means they are more self-conceited. Their consciousness of liberty, free will, of free power, free action, of free thought is indeed to achieve self-sufficiency or self-realization. But that attainment of power is so fragmented that it disintegrates their own body and mind. They cannot differentiate between good and evil. The harmony of their body and mind get imbalanced. So Herbert Marcuse, in this regard, in his book One Dimensional Man, Studies in the Ideology of Advanced Industrial Society, written in 1964, writes that negative or dialectical thinking, which sees existing things as other than they are, and as denying possibilities inherent in themselves, demands freedom from the oppressive and ideological power. So here we see that Emperor Jones, he catches or captures freedom, okay, as a convict or as a Pullman porter. Can you hear all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Hence, critics such as George H. Fromm and other editors of the same book point out the futility of modern materialistic civilized illusions that we live and die rationally and productively. So, what is our actual illusion in our life? Why we are all studying? Why we are all listening to virtual webinar? Because we want to attain lot of knowledge, but that knowledge would be we would be using to either acquire power or to acquire position. But in that process, we would be just living rationally and productively in this materialistic world. So here we have to understand that how the human bondage becomes so dominant that we forget how to liberate ourself from this kind of conscious discipline of bondage. Now, next, Tennessee Williams. The play Streetcar Named Desire. It centers on the theme metaphysical disgust. Means you start having for yourself lot of either very much of superiority complex, and when you have lot of superiority complex, there also the crisis occurs because you cannot develop a rapport, you cannot have certain kind of being get togetherness, and if you have certain bad past, then also you develop metaphysical disgust because you create low perception about yourself. So this kind of ceiling that we create around our body and mind consciousness, then also there is existential low perception we are creating for ourselves, and that is disgust. And that disgust we try to release through certain other disillusion disgust. Now, what do you mean by villainy or cruelty? Or what do you mean by terrorism? These are all the terms. Here they are referred that internally somewhere a person is affected with metaphysical disgust, and then he creates or borrows certain ideas which are not uplifting or emancipating him morally, rather making him a fallen man or fallen woman. No doubt, one can be a fallen man or woman, but point is that how you redeem, what steps of redemption you create. But no, generally the human body doesn't look for such optimistic, thoughtful steps. The play Tennessee Williams write on Streetcar Named Desire, referring to some unconscious wish fulfillment of the female protagonist Blanche Dubois' repressed desires, who searches to explore herself through self-deception, and she projects her beauty in dim lighted bulbs or cleansing herself with water off and on. While Stanley Kowalski, now who is Stanley Kowalski? Stanley Kowalski, if we use our native tongue, we will say he was brother-in-law of Blanche Dubois. Blanche Dubois has taken refuge, or you may say has come down to visit her sister Stella, and her sister's husband is Stanley Kowalski. But coincidentally, Kowalski is very majestic, defined means disobedient, and always disobeying whatever anything he feels, it has to be accepted as a normal norm. So he's a person, a challenge figure, always disturbed by Blanche's ears, because Blanche represents here a civil, coquettish woman, and Kowalski represented here as Casanova, a bohemian man who doesn't look into you may say puritanic uh, life, or to any kind of moral uh, ethics. And in order to control his aggression against Blanche, he tries to show his irritation by slamming the door, by kicking the things, and by screaming at Stella. Now, why does he scream at Stella? Why doesn't he scream at Blanche? Because Blanche is a visitor and Stella is his possession, is his wife. So on the wife he can shout better. And so he took out all his frustration at Stella initially. But later he was so disturbed and rotten character that finally his unconscious battle of irrationality reflects in his sexual aggression. He molested Blanche. He exposed Blanche's past to her acquaintance Mitch, and in this way, he spoils whatever the normal order that Stella wants in the house. And therefore, we see that somewhere Kowalski's metaphysical disgust becomes a disturbance between his conscious behavior and his unconscious repressed desires, which he wanted to inflict all upon Blanche. But he was somewhere sharing initially with Stella, but later the other women got affected by this. I would not like to discuss here Blanche Du Bois more, because Blanche Du Bois doesn't have that sort of metaphysical disgust at initial level. She developed metaphysical disgust when again and again Stanley Kowalski and looking upon her as a woman of bad reputation. Then she started also developing in herself that sense of metaphysical disgust, and she was trying to eliminate that perception by skipping the presence of Stanley Kowalski. But Stanley Kowalski was driving away this streetcar named Desire, where Blanche had taken shelter, spoiled her all dreams and of stability and protection. Now I come to the next play, Death of a Salesman's Dream. Why I'm talking about the salesman dream? Because in America, if we say, it is a nation of opportunity and promises. And when the playwright Arthur Miller was writing this play, there was a kind of a economic depression going on, and it was the consequence of course, the First World War, and the way the American citizens, they were looking to their independence and to their self-reliance through any mode of means and through any way they want to get success. But point was that they could not differentiate the reality of their own capacity and the reality of the capacity of nation, because the nation was already going into a lot of cutting edge due to the consequences of the First World War, and the nation's economy was going into doom. But the families of American societies, they had their own kind of clashes with regard to their personal orders and disorders. So the tragic hero of death of a salesman, Willy Loman, does not necessarily suffer from pride. Instead, he suffers from a false vision that helps a man to achieve the American dream. One of the sales consistent, Angel Hill, writes that Willy's problem is his personality or lack of it. He's like a cancer within his family. He refuses to see his weakness. Now, what was his weakness? Number one, he used to be a very social person, but his social contract was based on certain doctrines that if one flatters, if one bombasts, and if one goes to parties, and if one goes to certain kind of, gatherings where top shots, jackpots available, you can create your destiny. Now, for such kind of life, you need lot of pomp and show, and you need money. Now, this Willie, who could not earn money, how could he stand that kind of ostentatious society? So there he creates a kind of a gap between reality and expectations. So his expectations led him to decline one after the other, whatever situations he goes through. Number two, he had also another weakness with the women. He was a kind of a man who wants to be, gaining confidence if any women appreciating him or giving him company. And one can understand here also his son Biff, he tries to copy his father, but the son's weakness also was a cause of his decline. So both father and son imitating each other, not giving any support to the family. Now there is another son of Willy Loman, Happy. Happy wants to first, copy the ideologies that given by his mother. But slowly and gradually he realizes that living a doctrine life is not possible if one is in lot of, debits or credits of checks and balances. And the economy can only be earned if you use a lot of shortcuts. So salesman has to be, what kind of a salesman one has to be? They have to play their strengths. They can't just go as in the society to capture, certain stakeholders to give them always the money. They have to understand that stakeholders always compensate whatever they give. So Willie does not go out of his comfort zone. He thinks sales is all fakery, looking good, charming people, cracking jokes, or to be likable. He always exaggerates a say, tell lies of his profits, so not to lose respect in peers and to maintain integrity. Hence, Willie was the victim of his own profession. He was a bad salesman, a flawed man, blinded by arrogance. So he knew how his brother Ben, when he migrated to Africa and had earned a lot of money, even he knew about Charlie, his neighbor, and his son Bernard, that how they have worked on a certain principle of growth. and attain certain status, but still he did not try to borrow anything good from them. Rather, he stuck to his own whatever methods to exist in the society. And so finally he has to give up his life so that he can let his survivors live. And what did he do? He suicided so that his insurance money can be given to the family in time so that they can exist as better survivors. Now, next is the intermediary relationship between the cognitive sense and existence. The Western thinkers attempt to explain human bondage in context of progressively developing and self-projecting whole. According to Marcuse, there is a price for every progress, which often has been also seen in a way of destruction of morality or death of reason and experiential ideas for the sake of existence and metaphysical identity. So generally we believe that you can't get two birds in one bush. You have to leave one. You have to sacrifice one to attain something good. Of course, this is the pattern of the material world. But unless alternatives to relieve oneself from anguish and anxiety are not adopted, the gratification and joy in life cannot go on. So you have to develop certain alternatives where you can understand the ultimate truth of cosmic creation. Because as human, we are one of the objects of creation. And that cosmic creation has its own methodology of justifying the existence of human body and mind. If it goes towards wrong path, the results would be also the same. If it follows this good path, the results would be also like that. In this context, Nietzsche, a German writer, writes in his manuscript Will to Power about freedom and values. Here I would like to explain something about freedom. Even when, as Indians, we attained freedom on 15th August 1947, our Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, at that time, in his speech in the Constituent Assembly, focused on the word freedom. Freedom is attained through will to power. But freedom always dependent upon responsibility. And responsibility equates values. And values means coexistence. And coexistence is always based on, of course, self-emancipation, self-controlled path. It has to understand the context of good and evil when sailing through the journey of life. So Nietzsche says the belief that the world as it should be really exist is the belief of unproductive man. The unproductive man never wants the normal order, the comfort zone to be shattered. And they only go out of their comfort zone even when they find that they are getting another comfort zone. So they never like to go on the untrodden or discomfort zone level. So here Nietzsche says that the productive man and the unproductive man has to be understood. who do not want to create a world as it should be. Hence, human consciousness should always be in process of becoming. It is never in itself. That's why we say that generation after generation, Indian independence has been retained, or American independence, or Americans' dream has been retained. So, how it retained? It is because of the process of becoming and not being trapped in certain faculties that cause bondage or disrupt your progress. I think my 3 hours, 1 hour is to be over. So I'm concluding. The selected writings purport human bondage to nature or cosmos dynamics with regard to metaphysical psyche that manifest means open up or discloses cognitive knowledge of the world. So here we all are at the present moment acquiring knowledge or disseminating knowledge either through lecture or through the narratives.
English time.
Nischint moral individualism. Unlike Immanuel Kant's moral idealism, focuses on self-overcoming. Earlier I said becoming, and now self-overcoming. That is one's rights and opportunities, existence, choice, exploring one's path to create continuity in creation and civilization. Then only we can be away from certain kind of blocks or bondages. I wanted to discuss mice and the men. There it is there in my slide. Um, if you give me the time, I'll discuss. Otherwise, for next time.
Ma'am, you can go ahead if you wish to.
Okay, so let me discuss mice and the man also, and about these authors of the American society. Yeah, yes. Mice and the Man is not a drama, it's a novella. It's written by John Steinbeck. Mostly all the writers that have selected, they have been creating a platform for not only academicians or intelligentsia of America to discuss, to create certain nation building steps. And those nation building steps was not, just thinking about social issues. It's also about how the psyche pursues, how the human psyche pursues the that one goes through due to certain circumstances. Besides that, how the external factors, social, external factors are also cultural. They are in your genes, because from different background, from different environment, and different surroundings are there available. So all the American nation, if wants to be a superpower, or if wants to fulfill the goal of American dream, they have to also focus on these aspects of surroundings, the conditions of those who look down upon themselves, conditions of those who want to progress, and conditions of those who would patronize. So these three kind of categories are included in this novella. Lenny is a person who is intellectually disabled. Now, what do you mean by intellectually disabled? His reasoning capacity is not as strong as his friend George. George is not his brother. They are friends. Somewhere they came across in United States, and they finally had a bond of friendship between them, and they became, close companion and close accomplices in whatever actions they were following for their survival. Then so they shifted to another place, California, as migrant laborers, and they started working in a ranch. Now, what do you mean by ranch? Ranch in California were made for migrant laborers to either do cultivation of grain and of grapes. They had some kind of facilities, not good privileged conditions, but certain sort of facilities to pass their time as migrants. So this novel talks about the migrant issues, labor policies, labor conditions, and it's very relevant and contemporary, especially in post-pandemic times. If you read this novel, you will find that how their friendship, or kind of, so close to each other as companions, could not save them. Why could not save them? Because if one friend is completely abled, he knows how to have his aura to be in a check and balance. Aura means the personality to be in check and balance with regard to negotiations, communication, correspondence. Now, negotiations was because George wanted a farm, and his dream was to purchase a land and to have a farm. But point was that Lenny could not give him that all sort of economy, or you may say finance, so they could purchase that farm. So they decided to go in a ranch and work as migrants, and there they met another character, Candy. Candy is the boss, and he is a little dog, and he is looking after that ranch. And there is another fellow, Crooks. He is also a migrant laborer, but another marginalization of his persona is he is a black man. So racially, he is also in crisis. So he has a double crisis, one as a migrant laborer and another as a black man. Then there is the son of Candy, Kurtley, and his wife. Now all these characters, they are very much connected to each other, and they desire something. But problem of all these characters is they were suffering from certain kind of vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities means, like George, a quite strength and robust person, but he has no finance and he needs networking. Lenny, intellectually disabled, so he cannot understand rationally the communication or the negotiation. He's always some kind of a flux of, because in his past he had been somewhere convicted due to some accusation, and so his past was not good. Then Candy is all physically disabled person. Crooks, racially suffering. So all they are in a certain sort of vulnerabilities. But as they were also in search of survival and stability, they all carry a dream. And for that dream, they managed to be befriended and to even put at stake all their inherent values to realize their dream. Now, here the phrase inherent values. Inherent values means God has gifted to every human mind and body certain, strengths. There is no one in the world that doesn't have any good qualities or strengths. Question is that, do we realize our strengths? Do we understand that how our strengths are our own values? We generally borrow the negative, vibes, the negative aspects to uh, build our value system, and then our value system gets into certain kind of trap, and we struggle with internal, you may say, loneliness. Even if you have friends, even if you have employees, even you have relationships, friendships, you have certain kind of sensitivity of isolation, and you try to sometimes overcome. But with regard to the marginalized migrants who work in the grain and grapes ranches, their economic conditions and insecure cello life and harshness of their lives, they all get into troubled state, because whatever they earn is all spent in gambling or in seeking women company or in other pleasures. So their actual realization of their dream or their actual self capacity is somewhere lost, because they are totally entrapped in the outward circumstances. The given situation becomes so dominant that they cannot understand what is their actual persona. And if somebody makes them realize their actual persona, then also they fail to think consciously. Now, in this novella, the end is so bad that Lenny somehow unknowingly kills Cutley's wife, and all ranchers, they chased Lenny, and he hides in somewhere in the outskirts, a pond, where George said that if whenever he would be in trouble, he has to hide there to save himself. But all ranchers, as they were supporting with finance or with all that networking to George, so George knew that Lenny might have gone that suggested place to escape lynching and or ostracization. So George goes there, and George finally has to kill Lenny. Why? Because to fulfill the American dream, a sinful path was a kind of a medium. Otherwise, all lynchers would be killing George also, and then because George had supported or might have supported or might have guided Lenny, so the George kills Lenny to pacify ranchers. So see how complicated the meaning of bondage is applied here, that their shallow life, insecure existence leads them to commit such crimes, and they progress to the next. To end lecture, Structurism, who writes that man by his choice not only engages himself but engages all men. Man by his choice not only engages himself but engages all mankind in its entirety. For example, the character Dr. Faustus in the play written by Christopher Marlowe surrenders his will to Lucifer to have his choice of wish fulfillment in the present life. His desire affects all those around him, his scholars, his servant, his wife, and even his attendant, Mephistopheles, because all experience his change of behavior and actions. Eventually, all, even Lucifer, the power of evil, could not remain untouched by Dr. Faustus' devilish adventures. All face decay and doom due to the essence fallen into unethical or ethical anxiety. So here I end my lecture. Hope I could have been able to clear the concept bondage in contemporary times and how we are all engaged in duality of illusions and reality.
Thank you so much, Jayashree ma'am, for a very, very impressive, informative, and engaging session. I just have a request to make, ma'am. If you can please share your PPT with our students so that they'll be able to use it as and when they need it.
Sure,
Yes.
ma'am.
And yeah,
Definitely.
thank you so much, ma'am. And girls, if you have any questions, you can ask ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. A very good afternoon. My name is Jagriti Kaure.
Good afternoon, Jagrati. Thank you for raising a question.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you so much for the knowledge that you have given to us today. And sorry, ma'am, but I didn't understand the concept of metaphysical desires that you have told in the play of Tennessee Williams, A Streetcar Named Desire. So, can you please explain it a bit more?
Yeah, I'll explain through female uh, character Laura that there is a female protagonist Laura in one of the plays of Tennessee Williams, The Glass Menagerie. In the play Glass Menagerie, Laura is a slightly crippled person, and she has certain kind of inferiority, and mother always wants her to come out of that cocoon and to be like other normal people, because deformity and disability is not the issue of existence. What is the issue of existence? The courage. If courage, you don't possess courage, if you don't have good perception about yourself, you cannot survive, right? So you might have seen that even the crippled, handicapped, disabled, they also survive. They are also contributing to nation. So here, the meta means the internal, and physical means your internal existential ideas, internal notions in your psychology that you develop. Now, mother is very much paranoid that if she would not come out of her shell, if she would not break her imaginary world of living within the in Menagerie, she has created a museum of glass articles like unicorn and other kind of crystal objects she has collected, and she used to have her pastime in those collections. So mother wanted her to learn something. She is so free, and she can go out, she can learn stitching, she can learn other cooking skills and whatever she can do, because she is totally fit. Why she's thinking herself misfit? And there is another word Tennessee Williams brings to this protagonist, that she's fugitive. She has captured herself. She has arrested her mind in her own self created zone. And that zone has become a comfort zone for herself. But when she comes out of her room, her brother exists, her mother exists, her uncle, other neighbors. They all see her, and they find her that she's completely fit, only with a little defect. How could she not survive like others? So her mother arranges a kind of meeting for her with a person of an opposite sex, and that character is Jim. Coincidentally, she dressed herself well, uh, and she tries to uh, accommodate whatever her feelings she has created for herself into kind of fitness. And she meets that fellow Jim. She has good time with her in her house. She wanted to change. There she develops a desire. What desire? To change. Now, sometimes when we come out of our own zone and catches up with the outside world, sometimes the outside world also has their own gaze. They have their own, sense of otherness. Now, Jim had a good conversation. Both of them had a happy time. So next time they thought to go out. Now who they? Who thought to go out? Laura. But Jim next time when visited to her house, he said that I can only come to meet you, and I felt that you are somewhere lonely. You have some kind of metaphysical loneliness or sense of isolation. So I felt that I should relieve you from that kind of sensitivity. Till this moment, Laura has some kind of desire. She thought she will go out with him. The moment he tells her that she has been engaged to other women and he cannot go out and give this relationship a kind of other name, there that delicate, fragile Laura's longing go into shattered state. She's broken. Now, why she has to break herself? Why she has to go into denial? Why she wants to withdraw? Here, Americans are telling to women of American society, see, Jim may be a very good, dynamic person, but he's also not a man of complete, absolutism. There might be some weakness in him also. Perhaps Laura had not seen it. And if she had been in long-term relationship with him, Jim could have got some kind of weakness. But Jim has overcome, and he is doing well in society and for nation. So here the playwright is saying that you have to accept your reality. And if you don't accept your reality, you will go into some kind of abyss, withdrawal, denial, negation, and you will never be able to fulfill your metaphysical desire with pragmatic approach. So you need pragmatism.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now it is very much clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other student? Okay, I think, madam, there are no queries, no questions. Right.
Thank you.
I just request Insha to please propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much very much for your wonderful explanation. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Uh, okay. Usha, I think Kali Usha is extending out of hand.
No, no, Insha, madam. Insha is our student. Yeah.
Thank you, Diksha, for such a wonderful note of thanks. I'm highly and deeply inspired and very much humbly accepting your invitation. But I would like that your ma'am should come to Udaipur with certain group of students and have you have a certain kind of excursion because
Sure, ma'am. That can
currently
be
you
done. That
require
can be done.
leisure trip, and with that you have certain kind of education dissemination also through our very rich libraries. So I think you all can also come. It's not always a academic trip. It should be a leisure trip also with an educational purpose. And thank you for integrating and establishing such a good relationship with all our university. I'm really obliged. Thank you, Dr. Archana. Thank you, Shikha, Usha, and especially the Honorable Principal Rashmi Dubey for giving us to interact and to be online. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. And we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
dear students.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I hope all your questions are answered.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Yes,
you.
All
ma'am.
right. Okay, then see you on Monday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you so